wonderful opportunity to introduce this book, which is, I think, very nice, unless, even though I worked on it, and very interesting and touching a wide variety of topics, extremely relevant to a great number of problematic and controversial areas of study. In particular, the main thing that moved the author, CHO GYAL NAMKHAI NORBU, to work on this topic is the specific characteristic of the manuscript that around which the whole book is kind of constructed. And that is a manuscript coming from the Dunhuang caves, the very famous caves in modern-day southern Gansu in western China, which is very well known that there is a cave in the Mogao complex of caves that remained sealed up to the early 1900s from the, I think, mid-11th century. And so that is the, they call generally the terminus ad quem. When it was sealed, it means that all the manuscripts contained therein are obviously older than that. So you can say that they are older than that time, but you cannot necessarily say how old they are. And specifically the manuscript that is the center of this book, which is called, contains a text that is called Rypa, or also the Six Vajra Verses, is a text that it doesn't say explicitly, but it can be read as being a kind of synthesis, a summary, a very short memorandum, so to say, something that is made to enable practitioners to recall the main aspect of the Dzogchen teaching. Now, I don't know if many of you know very well what the Dzogchen is. It is a tradition in Tibet that we can consider to be metaphysical in nature. So it does not start from, for example, limitations, vows, ethical conduct, or it does not base on tantric transformation practices, breathing, and so forth, but simply it starts from the end. It starts from where you want to arrive. That is from the realization that all phenomena are perfect from the beginning. That is sort of the core idea of Dzogchen from the point of view of the attitude or the view that they have. You start from realizing that the individual is a sort of perfected mind, so to say. It's very not easy to explain, and probably even more difficult to understand. I hope that through this book, for those who will have the patience to read through it, you can understand something about this teaching. And I'm not particularly going into that because I'm responsible for translating the first part, or together with Adriano Clemente, who also did the translation of the actual Vajra verses with the commentary on them, which is extremely explicative, extremely synthetically clear, although it suggests, so to say, a lot of reflection that has to be done, a lot of practice and work and application of these concepts and principles in one's own life. I can show you here, there is a calligraphy by Rinpoche himself, this one, kind of organized in colors and in beautiful, I would say it's gyug, a kind of fast style of writing, and you can get the very easy to read for those who read Tibetan script as well. So very short about this part. There are 6 verses, 6 lines that can be read in a variety or in a sort of cascade of levels of interpretation, or also levels of understanding, in a variety of tripartition into which the Dzogchen teaching can be understood. For example, one is the base, the path, and the fruit. Now, the base being how things are basically, how phenomena can be understood, comprehended in their fundamental, real, ultimate truth, and then what you have to do about it, and then in the end what the result is of that understanding. No? And this is quite, so to say, once you have read them with that view in mind, you can then apply that to another scale of tripartitions. But it will be more clear if you look at the big book, and it's better for me probably, and for you as well, that I talk on the other topics that this book is in. And that is, well, I should also say that for many Tibetan tradition, this Dzogchen teaching has a long history being considered spurious or not authentic, not Buddha Dharma that came from the Buddha Shakyamuni, for example. Depending on the view of the various individual people who looked at that from different angles, it had been criticized in many ways. And particularly the main critique is that it was not something authentic coming from an authentic source. So, which is a crucial topic in all Buddhist teachings. No? The Buddhist teachings should be transmitted starting from an origin, which is the origin is the goal. No? So the teachings basically are taught first by the Enlightenment itself, and then transmitted through humans who transmit it in order that these humans can go back to that Enlightenment. So, to say that it does not go back to an authentic, authoritative, enlightened source is like saying it's useless. It doesn't work. It is not something that can take you there to where you want to go, to the goal, enlightenment. So one of the critiques was that there were no Dzogchen texts found before a certain date, particularly the 13th, 14th century, and the Dzogchen terminology was not so apparent, and it took later time to be well organized, and so on and so forth. So it is crucial for CHO GYAL NAMKHAI NORBU to demonstrate that, or at least to suggest or to give ideas according to which it can be demonstrated that it is not that way. So a number of topics are touched here. First of all, the idea that it comes from Dunhuang is important because it demonstrates that before that Dzogchen was well known even outside of the, let's say, borders of proper or central Tibet. that it was something that you could find in a Buddhist library around in the various deserts along the Silk Road. And this obviously is a proof of existence, no? And so in this book he presents this reading of these 6 Vajra verses, or Rigpa Kujuk, with the accurate commentary and with the argumentation that it constitutes the core of the Dzogchen teachings. The tradition says that the great translator Vairocana, who was active around of the time of Guru Padmasambhava in Tibet, went to Oḍḍiyāna in let's say northwestern India, or modern day Pakistan, so northern Pakistan, for which we will come back later, and retrieved some texts, particularly of the Semde series, so-called, and the first one he translated into Tibetan was this 6 verses, or Rigpa Kujuk. Rigpa Kujuk, Rigpa means the state of, well, let's say the state of realization of a Dzogchen practitioner, very shortly and very generically. And why is it called the Cuckoo of Rigpa? Because the cuckoo in Tibetan folklore, so to say, or Tibetan tradition, but also in other places, is the first bird that when he sings, you know, spring is around, no? Winter is coming to an end, and the beautiful season and the light and the energy of the rebirthing of nature and so forth is about to happen. So it's a symbol of very good, of very auspicious melody, so to say. So as a for the in order to so to say propitiate the initial starting of this tradition in Tibet, he translated this text first, probably also because it was particularly synthetic, no? And from that first translation, the text kind of spread out in a variety of other texts. It is found as a part of other important Semde texts, such as, for example, in particular, the famous CHO GYAL, the king, the all-creating king, I think it's translated. So it is a actually pure, fully Dzogchen text, or at least it can be read as a fully Dzogchen text. No? Some people argue, for example, that it is also, it can be read in terms of the instantaneous sutra teaching, such as, for example, the Chinese Chan teaching. But I think that is a bit far-fetched, in my opinion. This part of the book with the commentary and the annotation and so forth was translated by Adriano Clemente, who is the main translator for all the works of CHO GYAL NAMKHAI NORBU. For my part, I did the translation of the quite important introduction part here, which is, I think, more or less 2/3 of the book, I think. And the story of this translation is a bit quite funny, because I initially I thought, when they asked me to translate, I thought I use it as a base text for my translation courses in summary in Italy. And we have a group of students, and we translate text together. And so I tried to propose this one, and everyone cursed me forever, because it is really very difficult from a variety of points of view. first of all, most texts are quite ancient, quite old, and although in Tibetan has this incredible characteristic that you can read the text written like 1,000 years ago, similarly as the ones written yesterday or today, no? Provided you use the same style of language. But nevertheless, the texts are sometimes quite convoluted, I should say. I probably shouldn't say, but or using words that are difficult to grasp. No, so to say, they are not. Dictionaries for Tibetan language are very bad, and so sometimes you have to do a full research for every word that you encounter in the text, no? And it is done in with a structure that is typically Tibetan, traditionally Tibetan, where you have an author who wants to demonstrate a point, and in order to do so, he quotes text. If the text is considered to be authoritative, the quote for the demonstrating a point is considered to be a definitive demonstration, really. Quoting an authoritative text is equals to demonstrating logically something. Okay, so quotes are very important, and this text is made up of a number of quotes, just interspersed with some commentary, some connective text in a completely different style of language, which is generally these days called modern literary Tibetan. So, what was the purpose, or what is the idea behind this introduction? It is to to shed light on the various complex historical, geographical situation that was actual around the turn of the millennium, the first millennium, no? Or even little bit later, little bit. So the relationship of the Tibetan world with the surrounding Indian or subcontinent areas, to sort out what these, or where these semi-mythical territories were, such as Oḍḍiyāna, maybe you have heard about those, or Shambhala, maybe this one is more likely to be common, no? And so there is a research, mostly done in this textual world, to pick out passages that could point to an identification of these places and the relationship that occurred among them. Also linguistically, looking at the various, for example, title of text and so forth, in order to sort out what kind of languages were implied in all this complex Tibeto-South Asian world. And in particular, about the identification of Oḍḍiyāna, there is a large part. Oḍḍiyāna as a region has been baffling scholars and students for a long time, to the point that for some it is not even a real place. No? It is a place of the mind, so to say, a place where you can go only via spiritual realization, so to say. You have access to that repository of knowledge that pops up into your meditating mind, so to say, and you call that the place of Oḍḍiyāna, or Shambhala. No? Shambhala, many Tibetan authors, for example Taranata, who is a great scholar of the 17th century, more or less, he said he wrote a guidebook to Shambhala, how to go to Shambhala. But first thing he says that is you cannot go there with your senses, with your body, with your gross figure. It's a place of the mind. No? Others say that they are actual physical areas, physical places. No? And most probably they are both of these things. They are mind places, places where only the spirit can visit, and places where the body can visit. Most probably, if ordinary people go to Oḍḍiyāna or to Shambhala, they wouldn't even notice that they are in a particular place. So, so for doing that, he CHO GYAL NAMKHAI NORBU kind of organizes the book in a kind of groups of quotation demonstrating various points. And like for example, where Oḍḍiyāna is. So in that particular part of the book, which is based on the biography of the Tibetan Siddha or realized practitioner Oḍḍiyāna. Oḍḍiyāna means the one of Oḍḍiyāna in Tibetan, the one who comes from Oḍḍiyāna, and he got this honorific appellation because he actually went to Oḍḍiyāna. And he wrote a very precise autobiography in which he states all the places where he went along his journey. So he started from Central Tibet, he went to the Kailash area, he crossed over to probably to Kashmir, if I remember well. We have also a map inside the book where which was quite difficult to reconstruct, to be honest. And yeah, like this one you can see. And this is the journey by the Siddha Oḍḍiyāna, up and down journey. And he mentions really precise the various places where he is, where he went, the time and the direction it took him to go from one place to another, and how he reached the central place of Oḍḍiyāna, which is called Dumatala, and which is in present-day Swat region of northwest frontier province in Pakistan. So these things kind of contribute to a location of Oḍḍiyāna. If you maybe if you have heard of this topic, you can remember that some scholars put Oḍḍiyāna in in eastern India, in Orissa, based on actually some masters who wrote that vaguely it can be placed in that area. And in fact, Orissa has some very important, particularly the city of Puri, I think, some important Buddhist history. Still now you can see a lot of ancient Buddhist shrines in Orissa, and particularly even within the famous Jagannath Puri temple, which is the main pilgrimage point in Western India, I think. Another interesting topic and controversial topic is the history and relationship of the ancient kingdom of Shangjung in Tibet, which was located in western Tibet, and I think particularly it is well known, or quite well known in these days, among scholars mostly, as a very important sort of pre-Buddhist kingdom in Tibet, due to the work of CHO GYAL NAMKHAI NORBU himself in other books, not really in this one. In this one he tried to find clues on the relationship that might have occurred between the kingdom of Shanshung and the surrounding area. Shanshung is or was located in western Tibet, around, maybe centered around the Kailash area. No? As you know, the Kailash area, in particular the Kailash mountain, is considered to be in the Indian tradition a kind of hypostasis of the Meru mountain, and it is a very important pilgrimage place for all sorts of religions, let's say. The Hindu, the Burmpo and the Buddhists in this area, and circumambulate the mountain ritually, and do their various different homages to them. And so it was obvious that there were very close connections and interactions between these culture, the Shanshung culture, which had a tradition that very difficult to reconstruct these days what it actually was about, but what we know is that it had a very important place for the emperor or for the main ruler. He was considered a kind of a emissary of the sky, no? Of the principles, so to say, representatives of deity on earth, and many things in common with all the Chinese tradition, and that he had a very well organized group of ritual priests around him, like they were 12, I think, if I remember well, and they were responsible for keeping the harmony between the king and the reign and the kingdom, and with the neighbors and all. So I think it is very clear that there were many interactions between these kingdom of Shanshung and the Indian surrounding areas. This is important, obviously, because the Burmpo, or the representatives of the old ancient Shanshung religion, which is still somehow alive today, also have a Dzogchen teaching. They also transmit a teaching that is similar and bears the same name of the Buddhist Dzogchen. So all of this is terribly complicated, and no doubt it needs a lot of research more, a lot of also archaeological evidence to be confirmed or denied what is contained in this book. But I think personally, and maybe I think we can then have questions, if you like, which I think are the more funny part of the story. I see quite bored people in front of me. So maybe questions can enliven things a little bit. But I think it is a book that contains many kind of challenges, so to say, things that try to, I'm not saying to draw a new picture of the history or the ways how religious interaction worked in the past, because that is really difficult to reconstruct. And also maybe you find a point affirming a certain thing, you then find something negating it, no? And it is really difficult to say which one is true. Probably it is best to go with the same Vajra verses. Maybe I can go into that a little bit when it says Nazoranji Minkyan. So this means the variety or multiplicity. So maybe here we can get a little view into this. So although the intrinsic reality of variety is non-dual, non-dual means that nothing is really separated from nothing else. No, it means that there is no actual establishing something as an independent entity. No, very very classical. Natsoranji Minikyan. So the nature or the intrinsic reality of multiplicity is non-dual. Nevertheless, Chashinidu Tretantrel. This can be read in a variety of ways, but in any case we can say as different things that appear, or in the different things that appear, there is no conceptualization. That means everything appears just like as it is, without any bondage by discursive mind, or without any construction, without any artificial contribution by a logical mind, a mind that wants, a mind that desires, a mind that does not want, does not desire, no, or refuses, and so forth. Jijinwa shemitokyan. Jishinwa, it means how it is, the thing, how, or reality with the capital R, so to say. Jishin actually means, Ji means what, and Shin means how. So, what, how, literally, it means how it isness. It's very difficult to translate these kind of words because probably we lack the concepts, no? But the total variety of manifestation, or which is actually the total variety of manifestation, can be interpreted of our own perception, no? What we see, what we perceive, what we think, and so forth. Mitok is not conceptual, or is not something that is linked to discursive thought. And then it says Nampananze Kuntusan. The Nampananze is a Tibetan translation of Vairocana, but here it really means that which makes thing appear. No, Nampanang means some say the illuminator. No, the thing that enlightens things, not only enlightens in the sense of enlightenment, but makes them visible. Is all good, all positive, total positivity, in the sense that it's completely enlightenment. It is very Dzogchen, so it is very simple but not so easy, as they used to say, as the master used to say. Si bezove ne pante, because it is complete, this it, no, is the core reality or whatever. Because it is complete, it has abandoned the ailment or the illness of searching, of effort, of going after something. No, the mind finds itself in a sort of reflexive contemplation, and everything appears, but there is no going after, there is no refusing, there is just, so to say, rejoicing in everything being already perfected, everything being kuntusab. And then it says lungi nepe sharpayim, and because it is there spontaneously, that's it. More or less. You can read a better translation than that in the text. The first two verses are related to the outlook, how in Dzogchen you understand things. You should consider things to be the tawa, no, or the base, if you like, better said in this case. So things are. There is multiplicity, but there is no duality, and this is the base. Then there is the path that one does not apply discursive mind, for example. No, whatever you think, it's wrong. I'm not particularly talking about your thoughts. And then the fruit is that you just contemplate. You remain in a situation which is both embracing multiplicity but permeating its principle, so to say. I use words that are not usually common in this kind of place, but maybe they can be understood. So I think it's a good time for questions, if you like. Or, I don't know if you there are also a number of nice pictures inside. Variety of sources and deities, and so I think it's a nice book. Yes, please.
Yeah, just looking at the map, which is fascinating. I think there's a very slight error. Pakistan should be Afghanistan. But I'm interested in the whole link with the Buddhist civilization which occurred in what is now Afghanistan. The 40 kilometers southeast of Kabul is Mesa Alniak, which is this vast temple structure which lived not only on a copper-coloured mountain, but actually a mountain of copper. It's this huge load of copper which is actually there. And we always talk in terms of Shangshun, but I wonder if there isn't actually some relevance also to this very profound and considerable Buddhist civilization which was located in what is now Afghanistan, as Mesa Alniak, Bagram, a huge Buddhist site in Bagram. There are a whole bunch of them, all being wiped out, which is ghastly, of course. I don't know, do you feel there's any link possibly here with the civilization, which is definitely there, as opposed to Shangshun, which is not quite different?
There, in that area, definitely not. Well, some say that the Burmpo has Zoroastrian origins, that is old Persian origins, which I doubt, seriously, honestly speaking. I think the Afghan Buddhist remains, or let's say the time in which Afghanistan was also populated by Buddhist, practitioners and followers, is earlier than that.
Yeah, but I think it overlapped, didn't it? I think
definitely it probably had some propagation. No?
Yes.
Also the Gandhara, all the Gandhara. I think there is a continuity with that. No.
Yes.
Nevertheless, I think that, and also that was the route by which Buddhism went to the Chinese area, no? Which is much earlier than the Tibetan Buddhization, so to say. No? I think there was, I think the idea of border, to put it in another perspective, is a modern idea. In ancient time, I think cultures, civilization could migrate much more easier than now, and they were also much more prepared, maybe this is a bit pessimistic, to cohabitate, no, with other things. No problem. Like we can see in the Dunhuang caves. The library hosted any kind of text, of any kind of tradition, Buddhist, Christian, even some Jewish things, but Taoist, all the different Buddhisms and so forth. Everything was there, and it's really an open set of mind. No, it's not you go there and you burn the books because they are different from what I think, which is more or less the very common recently. I don't know if that is about your question.
It's an ongoing discussion, isn't it?
Yeah. I think the land, that area was probably very open, no? Because it's once you are in the area of Peshawar and so forth, it's easy to go in Afghanistan, and so along with the commercial routes. And nowadays there are commercial routes which only goods go along, you know. Maybe you have a giant container ship and two people are driving it, you know. But in ancient time, to move goods you needed a lot of people, so they could actually make a difference and influence to the places they went through. And they were accompanied by the ritualists, the people who made rituals for appeasing, for facilitating and so forth. So there is a good chance of mixing up everything.
Well, we saw this afternoon at the Dunhuang exhibition that was this extraordinary thing that actually happened, whereby Tibetan translators were translating from, we're not quite sure what languages, but into Tibetan.
Oh.
And those books then being forwarded to the Tibetan Empire, which presumably is the Yalang Valley. And that actually goes completely against the orthodoxy, which is that everything came directly from India.
Well,
and I was completely blown apart by that, because it just means that stuff came into Tibet from a completely unexpected direction.
Yeah. Then it's not necessarily adopted, no? But you have to know something to refute it.
Yeah, if I may, you mentioned that multiplicity exists, but its non-duality is not existent. Why is that? If we consider all the phenomena which exist, why duality specifically excluded? Because it has certain functionality. If it is, as anything else is perfect, illusory, why it does not have its right within this scope of...
No. Sorry, the question is, why is among all this variety of phenomena duality not existent? That is the question.
Why it's not in the multiplicity?
Yeah, well, that is an interesting question. I never thought about this perspective. But let's say that duality is a concept, no? Duality is a way the mind works, and all of Buddhism in the end goes back to understanding the mind, you know, and the principle of mind, or the nature of mind, or whatever you want. That is the empty reality of the ultimate mind, so to say. And so duality is an attitude of the mind that thinks that, for example, myself, I'm different from non-myself. And this is a mistake. So a mistake is non-existent. That's the reason. No, it's a mistake by the mind, so it is not corresponding to a reality. You see what?
Yeah, it's kind of non-dual. It's ignorance, kind of.
Yeah, it's not an object. Yeah,
Yeah, the multiplicity is there, but
duality is a facet of ignorance. No, reality is that I, as individual, am not separated from anything. I'm not established as a real entity, permanent and so forth. No, so this, for example, is what I perceive. No, is I perceive it as different from myself. No, but in fact it does not exist if not my perception from a certain point of view. So if I think that my perception is different from me, that's a mistake. And that is the dualistic mind.
But that illuminating light, is it coming from you, or it does not have that subjectivity?
It is within the individual. It is his real state, let's say, ultimately, but it is not. It is like, for example, described as the sun covered by clouds. No, you know the sun is there. You can see it because there are clouds, and nevertheless, it's there. So it is the actual thing that switches on the light behind your perception, so to say, behind the activity of your mind, behind anything, dreams, sleep, deep sleep, everything. I don't know if that was there.
No, absolutely. It's just the term you mentioned, Rigpa, so consciousness also has this Rigpa, luminosity aspect, and a bigger illuminating thing kind of stands behind. So
No. Rigpa is difficult to explain, particularly because it has a vast variety of ranges of application. For example, it can refer to anything that is related to knowing. No? For example, also science is the places of knowledge, scientific topics. No? Also culture is linked with the Rig word. No? But in this case, it is the identification, or if you like, the dissolution of all obstacles, the clouds, that prevent you from being the sun. With this analogy, obviously, no, and then you are the mind is reflexively aware and completely absorbed into that contemplation without any need to elaborate mentally on it. Once it enters into elaboration, it's like that, it's finished. So it's simple but not easy, as they say.
Maybe it's a personal question, but I would like to know which challenge you had writing the book.
Well, I translated the book.
Sorry,
or
translated, yeah.
parts of the book. What challenges?
Yeah.
Oh, in Tibetan, translating from Tibetan is, I generally, my job is to teach Tibetan, among other things, but I teach Tibetan to people at many different levels, from beginning to, and I always say to all of them that translating from Tibetan is impossible. Because of several reasons, no? And that's actually the reason why it's, in my opinion, learning Tibetan gives you a much closer approach to the teachings than without it. Because I think the most difficult thing is to find the words in your target language. That is, let's say, in this case, English. Because, like, for example, these things we discussed right now, we do not have the concept. No? Traditionally, in the Western world, or the Western philosophy, or doctrines, or traditions, and so forth, these ideas are mostly absent. No? For example, in Tibetan, there are around, like, I don't know, maybe 20 words for the mind. So, how many words do we have for the mind? Just a few. No, maybe mind, awareness, cognition, these kind of things. No? But in Tibetan, they are very technical. They are used to refer to very specific aspects of mind, or to the mind itself, the mind in itself, mindness. No? So all of this requires a lot of thinking and a lot of reflection and research, maybe. But in my case, in this text particularly, because it is mostly historical or biographical, the part I translated, the challenge was more to really to understand what it means. For example, there is a part of a biography of a Bumpo master who is Gerpung Nanshe, who had a weird biography. So they got with his master, I think, I don't remember well, it's a long time ago. It took me like 10 years because I did every summer with my students, so 1 month work. We didn't go ahead too much. Then in the end I took it a little bit faster, but it was kind of fun for me to punish the students. But for example, at a certain point they got stuck on an island in a lake, and for a year they lived very well and they made offerings on a rock. No? Then they ran out of food and they could not get back to the mainland because of some floods that were there. I don't remember exactly, but so they lived for another year scratching the rest of the offerings from that rock. And the way this was formulated was using completely unknown words to me, and also it was a kind of strange process. No? Would you? And then in the end, I think they left the island walking on a rainbow. So they had the kind of that realization. But when you're translating, you don't know what's coming. No? So you very often are thrown into this because Tibetan has a lot. Tibetan lexicon is very polysemic, we call it, meaning a single word has a large variety of possibilities. No, some of which never used. No, or for many of which the dictionaries are misleading or even mistaken. So it's really difficult job, I must say, but rewarding and also fun sometimes.
So I just wondered, because the Dunhuang document, basically you wrote the book on the basis of the materials that you discovered in Dunhuang.
Well,
are they only Tibetan language, or does the book contain only
this only Tibetan? Only Tibetan. Yeah.
The source
Yeah.
language. Okay.
This is the Dunhuang manuscript is actually very small. You can see a picture. I don't know if I find it here.
If you look online,
Yeah.
you can find these.
This is the commentary, no?
Okay.
A picture of the commentary. So all of this is Tibetan. That core manuscript from which all of this research that Rinpoche did starts, and all the materials that he used are Tibetan language, and all the text that we translated is Tibetan.
What was Namkhai Norbu's main sources for working on his translation and commentary?
Oh, a large variety, a really large variety. To be honest, the biography of Oḍḍiyāna is his student, I forgot the name to be honest, who wrote down the biography. But for the Shanshung is large variety of sources for the identification of Shambhala and so forth. There you have the usual sources, for example, the Vimala Prabha in Tibetan Dream, I think it's called. And so really no limits. Whatever he could find on these topics, he used as a source. So
is it mainly texts that are at the British Library? Or?
No. These other texts for the introduction, they are just, let's say, later texts, more recent compositions.
So there's no specific sort of one that assisted him more than others?
Well, the topics are so different that maybe for each topic he might have a main text. Then from that text he went to other sources, because traditionally every Tibetan author will quote a lot of other things. No? So you go in, kind of work your way through a variety of texts.
But he didn't do a bibliography of what he referred
Excuse me?
to. Did he do a bibliography of what he referred to?
I think there is a bibliography, yes. In the end, there is a bibliography of the text quoted.
Can I just ask you about the choice of words? You talked about choice of words in the target language. And that's something I've been very interested in, because I've collaborated with all the main translators in the Dzogchen community over the years. And full disclosure to ladies and gentlemen here, I am not a translator from Tibetan, but I was for many years one of the principal translators for Namkhai Norbu when he was speaking in Italian. I went all over the world with him, talking in English when he spoke. And there are many tapes and so on of me translating for him from Italian into English. But I am not a translator from Tibetan. However, I know all of the translators, and I also have, before I started working with Namkhai Norbu, I was a professional poet in the English language. Nearly all the translators, Adriano Clemente, Elio Guarisco, and so on, they were all not English. That wasn't their madrelingua, no? So I speak Italian pretty well. So we used to have discussions, and as you know, there's a whole spectrum of opinion and views and practice in translating. And we used to have some conversations, Adriano and myself, a lot, about how literal the translation should be. So, not being a Tibetologist, of course I feel humbled by your skill and Adriano's and Elio's and the others. Deepest respect. But when something is presented as an English translation, then I become a bastard. I say, hello, it has to sound like it's born in English, or it isn't a translation. It's an approximation, it's an attempt. So, for a while we had a situation where I would say, no, you haven't translated that, it isn't English enough yet, it needs to be born in English. And they would say, yes, but translators, other translators, when they read this text, they need to be able to compare the English with the original Tibetan, because they need to check the text. So for a while out there in Italy, we used to produce two versions. We would produce the literal version, right, which would sit alongside a rendering, meaning that that really sounds like something born in English.
Yeah.
And the literal translation enabled the scholars who are the minority in terms of a practice community, right, to be able to check and see, oh yes, that word is the equivalent of this word, and so on.
Yeah.
So this is question time, so I come to finally, pardon me ladies and gentlemen, here is the question. How do you feel about this spectrum of where you see yourself in the rendering versus the literal translation? Anything that...
Yeah. Well, to me, ideally, I would disappear. In the sense that I would try to put as little as possible as myself, but that's obviously inevitable. But choice of words is, well, when you talk about literal and non-literal, you refer to grammar, because there is no literality in words. No, you cannot say that, I don't know, semnyi has any literal correspondent in English or any other language. No, semnyi is what they generally translate as nature of the mind. No, I mean, there is no established literality in that. When you talk about literality, literal translation, it refers to the grammatical structure. No? So how things are formulated in the source language and how you then reformulate them in the target language. No? This is a very interesting topic which unfortunately would keep us here until... But for example, this word I mentioned, no? Sem, unfortunately we have to translate as mind. Nyi means itself. Mindness. No? Can you use a word such as mindness? You wouldn't, I think. I would probably. So they translate nature of the mind. No? Which is somehow, could you say it's literal?
It needs a footnote, that's the trouble.
Yeah, yeah. You do a footnote every word.
I worked with Namkhai Norbu myself in the early days. So we have the title of a book, Dzogchen, the Self-Perfected State, okay? But later we thought, oh, wait a minute, when you say perfected, it sounds like, so then people thought that word perfected should be completion, right?
Yeah, it's a past participle,
then
so it means that something happened.
Sounds like something with boundaries, but actually Dzogchen is without boundaries.
Yes.
So language is extremely difficult. So
yes.
Deepest sympathy and again my greatest appreciation for your efforts.
To come back to the basics, like the question before, when you put that into words, you give it necessarily a limit, because a word is an instrument for your discursive mind to understand an object. No? So words are always wrong. Because that mind, which is pristine self-cognition, reflexive awareness, contemplation, and so on, whatever, all of these words are just trying to give you an idea of that situation in which, or even situation is wrong, because it's a limit. No? Situation means you're in this situation and not in that situation. So words are wrong. Concepts are insufficient. No? And the whole trick is to try and propel you into understanding or into dissolving the habituation of the mind to use these aspects that are completely misleading. No? And they are looking outside instead of looking inside. In that sense, translating is approximating, trying to, even the original is an approximation. No? One of the definitions of the, let's call it absolute, is that it is not definable, ineffable. No? A word becomes, is a limit. And so, what can I do?